Mark Duplass, Emmy nominee for the morning show. Congratulations. How did you
Thank
get
you.
the big news that day?
I got a bunch of texts from some friends of mine saying congratulations on the nomination was kind of the language, which I assumed was the show itself getting nominated, right? Because that was what was supposed to happen, or what was plausible to happen, I guess I should say. And I really didn't expect anything, and I'm not just saying that to be like falsely modest. I just didn't expect it. And then another one said, "No, congratulations, you got nominated." And so then I started looking it up furiously on the internet, being like, well, I don't see it anywhere. And I finally found like a PDF that had my name on it about 10 minutes later.
It is kind of rude that they don't announce the supporting categories on the live announcements. You know, it's like that's not
I
good,
don't
everyone.
personally feel that way. Not to be contrary, but the way I feel about like award stuff is like it's all kind of crazy and all kind of
Hmm.
self-congratulatory, and to get uppity about what one does or does not deserve in this space would be kind of an exercise in ridiculous futility. I just take it as, oh my God, it's amazing that a bunch of people decided to give me this praise, and some algorithm meant that I got more votes than someone else. And it's, ridiculous, but at the same time, I do understand that this industry is like, it honors this stuff, and that's pretty cool, and I
Hmm.
do think that when you are nominated, it can open other doors for you. So insofar as like, might this nomination like get me another cool acting job, like that's really exciting.
Yeah, that's fine. Well, you're a very prolific writer, producer, director from the indie world. So, what was it like for you coming from that world into what was basically this flagship launch show for Apple as solely an actor?
It was different, I mean, I do have experience being on the sets of larger budget movies because I have played, small roles in bigger budget films and stuff like that. So that element wasn't new. But to be a key player consistently in such a large machine was different. And it was kind of a funny experience because we shot on the Sony lot in Culver City for the morning show, but three stages down on the smallest stage that there is there, we were also shooting Room 104, which is the show I make for HBO, where all the episodes are set in one hotel room. So
Hmm.
I was leading a little bit of a double life at the time, where I would be acting as Chip Black, and then kind of walking down to the Room 104 set for a while, and everybody was joking. It was like my Mrs. Doubtfire time, like hopping back and forth between the two worlds.
Did you ever have to pie your face? Like,
Exactly. Yeah, I forgot. I left my wig on a couple of times, and it was,
yeah.
yeah. Good,
Well,
good hijinks. Good
mhm.
hijinks.
Well, you're submitting the finale as your episode, which is not just a great episode for the show because all the storylines come together, but it's also a great episode for you and Chip because everything also comes together for him. And I think the viewer really understands him more because you find out he's the one who leaked the Mitch story to the Times.
Yeah.
So did you know that from the beginning, and how did that affect how you played him?
Yeah, I did know from the beginning that Mitch was the one to leak it to the Times. They shared that with me, and I'm not gonna like get on my high horse and be like, I used it in my whole performance, and but I will say it was helpful for me insofar as um, what I felt like was fun to play with Chip is that he's sort of a master at keeping the machine afloat. He'll do whatever is required to, skate around issues or keep issues quiet to get that show rolling. But his big Achilles heel is the way he feels about Alex. And I think he is secretly in love with her, and I think he doesn't even fully know it. And for me, the idea that the reason he leaked this information about Mitch to the Times is he knew they were going to get rid of Alex. And he figured if Mitch went first, they wouldn't get rid of two of them at the same time. So it would save Alex. And what I like about that is that that goes against his better judgment for producing the show. That gets into something more personal. So I thought that was really cool to kind of play that torch for Alex through the whole thing. And that was helpful in that regard.
Hmm. Yeah, because in the phone call scene, when you leave her the voicemail, you say it was always for you, which is subtle but loaded, because you could read that as just platonic, like him looking out for a
Hmm.
longtime colleague, or you could read it as romantic. So did you discuss that with like Mimi and Carrie and Jen?
Yeah, we talked about it a lot. I mean, I think that Chip fishes safely for her feelings. He doesn't go all out and say anything. And also, look, she's married. It's not through halfway through the season that he realizes that she might actually be potentially available to him. So he's never even allowed himself to consider it until that happens. And then, it also happens to be at the same time where he's having a massive crisis of conscience about who he is as a person in a position of authority as a white male in this industry, which is, I think, to me, the element of greater interest for, if I'm an audience member watching it. I think the love story or potential will they, won't they with Alex is interesting, but the story of a guy who has really rested on his laurels to a certain degree, believing that he's a good guy and he's on the right side of the story because, he generally is nice to and respectful of the women in the workplace, and he's certainly not committing the horrendous acts that the other white males in positions of power are committing. So he feels like he's doing it right. And I think the journey he undergoes through the season is a journey that a lot of people are undergoing right now in this moment, which is I probably didn't do enough. And just to be passively not evil is not enough. If you have a position of power, you have to be actively routing that stuff out. You have to be fishing for the systemic problematic behavior and getting rid of it. And that type of behavior is not rewarded when you're an executive producer of a morning show. What is rewarded is glaze over it and keep the show moving no matter what. And that's what he's done, and that's why he's been promoted. And now he realizes that he's culpable, and it's hard for him to deal with that. And I really liked that, and I thought that journey was oddly prescient in that it certainly applied to the Me Too movement, but now I think you can look at it in terms of the Black Lives Matter movement as well. And any white man in a position of power in particular, what should he be doing now? That's great stuff to think about. And it's great stuff to think about for season 2 because, at the end of this, Chip loses all of his power. So what's he going to do when he comes back? It's interesting to me.
Yeah, because I don't know if I would say Chip is the moral compass of the show, but he's definitely like the least questionable guy on the show. Yeah.
I think that audiences perceive a person who behaves like Chip traditionally to be the moral compass, and they accept him as such. And when I talk to people about it, they tell me that their perception is, oh, I love Chip. He was such a good guy. And I think relatively speaking, you're right, compared to Mitch Kessler and Dick Lundy, played by Martin Short, he is a better guy. But he's not getting it right, in my opinion. And I think that he doesn't realize that until a little too late, and he pays dire consequences in this story. But I think, I think about myself, if I'm being honest, and in a relatively much smaller position of power than someone like Chip has, but I run a small independent film production company, and I have power about who I hire and about what kind of stories I tell, and I think that there were years where I didn't do enough to further different kinds of stories and unrepresented people in front of and behind the camera. I think we missed that in our early years where we were just struggling to make our own living, and it's only been in the last few years with shows like Room 104 that, I've felt like we're getting closer to doing our part to tell more interesting stories with people who aren't offered that opportunity, and using whatever platform we have to support that. It's like I was late to the party too. And I think it's important now that we all just try not to be right and defensive, but try to be open and learn and move forward.
Yeah, because that's what he's doing, because he has to check his ego and admit that he was complicit, even accidentally. Well, in the finale, you also, Chip says no one's motivations are 100% pure. So What do you think are Chip's motivations, and how do you think it breaks down between doing the right thing, doing it for Alex, doing it to save his job, and maybe some other things?
You're dead on that. It's a big confusing mix of all of that for him, and I think on any given day he's not exactly even sure what his priorities are. But I liked the growth of Chip to be able to admit that and say that, because to me that means that's a person who is struggling towards integrity and knows he wants to get there, but doesn't really know how to get there because the business just, again, it doesn't really reward that type of behavior. But as to your question of the mix of, are his motivations for his own career to save his job? I think that's a little part of it. Are his motivations to try to save Alex and her career and ideally, turn his little flame into a fire between them at some point? I think that's a big part of it. I really do, at least for me and the way I played it. I do think that Chip has a good moral center, or at least that's the way I played him. I think he was behind on the times a little bit, and I think the societal wave caught up with him very quickly because it did move quickly, relatively speaking, for those kinds of people. And so I think, he got the behavior wrong, but I think his center is a good egg.
Mm-hmm. Well, you also get to punch Steve Carell in this episode. Yeah. So what was it like shooting that scene?
It was cool.
Is that how you rehearsed?
I love fight scenes. They're fun. They always go fast because everybody gets tired, particularly with dudes in their 40s. It was well choreographed by our stunt guys. But most fight scenes, and any actor will probably tell you this, they tend to be a little overly choreographed because the stunt guys, they're paid to show cool fighting. And Steve and I had a feeling that, Mitch and Chip probably aren't very good fighters, and that it should feel a little sloppier. So maybe we did a little work to kind of slopify it, if that's a word. And the best part, which I really loved, and this won't be a surprise because Steve really is such a great guy, is he's Mr. Affable and Mr. Sweet, but he's jacked. He's full of muscle, and I am not. And he's a huge movie star, and I am not. And he basically decided that he was going to be the one to take the fall to the ground first and have me land on him, because he knew if he landed on me, it would hurt a lot more than me landing on him. And he also did it in a way that was not in front of everybody loudly saying, let the small, non-muscly guy land on me. He kind of couched it and it'll work better for this character with this move. So he helped me out, and he didn't even use an ego boost to do it, which is, that really
that's just the kind of guy he is.
That's
still
Steve,
considerate. He's such an ally for less jacked guys.
Yeah, he is, yeah.
Well, season 1 shifted gears after Me Too happened, and I know season 2 is undergoing some rewrites now. So do you know if they're planning on touching on what's happening in the world with the pandemic and Black Lives Matter?
Yeah, I don't know exactly what they're doing from where we are as a society to incorporate it, but I do know that Carrie, our showrunner, has been secretly a little excited that she had more time to write season 2 and to incorporate some changes of quote unquote where we are now. And I try to be respectful of her. I don't push for answers on that stuff because I know when I'm writing, I'm sometimes not ready to talk about it, So I let her come to me when she's ready to talk about it. And
Mm-hmm. Well, what would you like to see for Chip in season 2? Do you want him to get his job back? Do you want him to go off on his own? Do you want him to and Alex to hook up?
Yeah, I don't have a particular agenda of what I want to see Chip do. But I do have things that I really love doing on the show, I really love those great 2-person scenes on the show that are built, whether that's with Karen Pittman or Deshaun Terry or Reese and Jen and Billy and Steve. We have such an amazing cast. So I love a 2-person scene. That's one of my favorite things to do. I also love those really crazy walk and talk scenes that are kind of like a geometrical, mathematical, creative challenge where you have to hit a certain amount of dialogue at a certain point so you can meet someone and grab the cup of coffee and pass the paper. And if you don't get there in time, you have to improvise something or cut something. So the actual challenge of that is really fun for me, because I don't do a lot of oneers in my own work like that. So I love that stuff. And I don't know. I mean, I really love the Alex and Chip relationship. I think it's got long legs to it. So I'm hoping we get the chance to explore that in whatever journey it takes.
Definitely. Well, you won an Emmy 2 years ago for Wild Wild Country. So what do you remember from that night, and what are your thoughts on the virtual ceremony this year?
The Emmy we won for Wild Wild Country was a great night. It was not what I expected. I'd seen pictures of like crazy Emmy parties and like Oscar parties and people dancing all night with their trophy at 3 a.m. and like Madonna's in the background for some reason. And I guess I kind of thought it was going to be that. But I was honestly at a point in my life, and this is just where I'm at, like where I have so many other things going on work-wise that I was like kind of tired and kind of had an adrenaline crash after we won. So about 40 minutes after I had the award in my hand, we're supposed to go to the parties, and I was just wiped. And honestly, I was talked out from talking to reporters and talking backstage and talking with everyone and phone calls coming in. So somewhere around 8:30 that night, I guess, I called an Uber because my driver was stuck somewhere, and went home with my trophy, and my wife and my kids and I ordered donuts and we went swimming. And
That sounds perfect.
That was pretty much
that's my kind of after party.
that's where, and I probably had about 4 or 5 donuts, and it felt fucking awesome. But the virtual ceremony, I have no idea what that's going to be. Look, I mean, I'll be honest with you. There is a small part of me that misses like being a part of the big tradition, like just to have done it once, to be nominated at the big ceremony as an actor in the tuxedo, that's kind of cool. But I think more my speed in general is just like, man, my kids are 12 and 8 right now. They're so fun to hang out with. The idea that I can just be home relaxed and be with them and farting around is probably more me anyway.
Yeah, awesome. Well, Mark, it was great speaking with you. Congratulations again and good luck. And maybe you can just hang out and order donuts in September with your kids, and it'll be another great night.
I'm going to do a round of pizza at first, and then there's going to be the donuts, and I'm real excited about it.
You should do a donut tower this time. Just upgrade.
I might still have one of those old kid toys where you put the blocks on there. I can just take the blocks out and put the donuts on it.
Perfect. Awesome.
In.
All right. Thank you.
Cheers.